Hello, hello, hello. It is me, your True Hill Phenom SP3, and we are back once again with Dark Side of the Ring Season 1 review. This time it's Episode 3, The Killing of Bruiser Brody. I
Frank.
am back once again. I'm back once again with the Princess of all the True Hills, Miss Chrissy Love.
Hello, hello, hello.
And of course, it is our other co-host from True Hill Heat, now on the Dark Side of the Ring Season 1 reviews. It is Mr. Titan, the True Hill resident alcoholic himself, Top Guy JJ.
Yo, what's up, yo? He got a little tongue tied there. I thought he was about to call me the goat host. And I was about to say, what? I'm about to be like, I'm far from that. I don't want that
Right?
title. I don't want that shit whatsoever. I'm like, you better get out to Chrissy. Chrissy became my goat last week.
Of course, of course. But this one, we are talking about the killing of Bruiser Brody, one of the more intense episodes of Dark Side of the Ring, with a story that hasn't been told that much on a mainstream platform. So, before we do anything, this is a quick reminder to you. Push that like button, give us a thumbs up. It helps the YouTube algorithm. It helps this channel grow and help other wrestling fans just like yourself discover this True Hill Heat content. And of course, you can push the iCard down at the bottom to subscribe and the bell to stay notified. So, Miss Chrissy Love, as always, I gotta ask, what is your overall view on this one, the killing of Bruiser Brody? This is a story that not a lot of wrestling fans knew about before this documentary. So, what were your thoughts on it?
um, this was so sad to hear. Really, really didn't know who he was until I watched this, and it's sad to see what had happened to him. To be honest, and people know, and they're not saying nothing neither.
Well, yeah.
People say they're not saying nothing. Abdullah, Cologne, all of them. Like
Damn,
all I know.
she calling out. She
Oh, we
calling
gonna
out
get into
government.
that.
Oh,
Oh,
We gonna get
okay.
into
All
that.
right. All right. So yes, this whole documentary, this episode starts off with the wife of Bruiser Brody. You can
Barbara.
Barbara Goodish, talking about the man that was Bruiser Brody, aka Frank Goodish. He was a former football player with the Washington Redskins.
Yep.
We even had footage of an interview where he revealed that, and then
Yeah.
immediately told them that he didn't want that aired because
Right.
he was now Bruiser Brody, who was
Yep.
known as one of the first wild man and most like hardcore, with having all these bloody death matches in the late 70s and early 80s. He had a memorable feud with Abdullah the Butcher, who was also a part of this documentary. Abdullah the Butcher, he's a own entity in himself. He deserves a Dark Side of the Ring episode himself for
I'm
all the
sure.
intense, crazy battles and the famous fork that he became infamous for in professional wrestling. So he contributed to this documentary as well. We had friends of Bruiser Brody, such as former WWE Hall of Famer and WWE superstar Tony Atlas, as
Yes.
well as former WWE manager Dutch Mantel. So, what did you think about these first couple of talking heads and their contributions, most notably Abdullah the Butcher?
JJ, you go first.
I mean, Abdullah, he's a unique one. Like just hearing him talk, like he actually truly believed him. Like you could tell from back then, they believed these characters. Like they thought this is who they really were. And he still to this day
Still think that. Yep.
looking like he could barely walk, telling you I
Mhm.
could beat you up whenever I want, I could do whatever I want to you. I'm like, yo, bro, this is like not the 70s, man. You just gotta hit you in the ankle and your whole life is over. But
Hit you in the side of the stomach.
yeah, but you can just tell like I like hearing stories when either whether they're right or wrong,
Yep.
they're like that because you know this is how they feel. Whether we're gonna dig into the facts, we're gonna get into it, but this is how they felt. It's
So,
pretty cool.
so I think that Abdullah the Butcher really was like the person who kind of uh had his own like point of view. He was there, but his stories did not always line up with the other
Yep.
individuals, most
That's
notably
exactly
Tony
what.
Atlas.
Yeah.
But we're getting more into Tony Atlas. So basically, to start off this story, they tell you about how Bruiser Brody became such an infamous wrestler in Japan and then over in Puerto Rico. He had gotten so big in Japan and then wanted to basically get into the professional wrestling world from a business perspective and
Yep.
bought a stake in World Wrestling Council, which is WWC, which was owned by the Colon family and Carlos Colon. It was also partially owned by my uncle Gino Gorilla Monsoon. So
And Victor
Victor Quinones or Gonzalez.
no, it was Carlos Colon, Victor no, not Keone.
Quinones.
Yes.
Victor Quinones and Gorilla Monsoon, and then Bruiser Brody basically wanted to buy a stake into it, and he was going to buy Gorilla stake in the company.
No, Victor's. He
Oh,
was looking
Victor.
at Victor's stake.
Oh,
Victor was
okay.
looking to sell, but my friend Mr. Gonzalez didn't like that.
Yes, Mr. Gonzalez is Invader number two. Invader number two and Bruiser Brody had a very fierce rivalry. This was all due to a matchup that they have. I think you have a little bit more information on that.
Yes, they both had a match, and as Tony and Dutch would say that Brody beat the hell out of him, and basically his head was all swollen. What did Tony say he looked like? Oh no,
He looked like he had an alien coming out of his head,
there you
and
go. Yep.
he was beat to a bloody pulp in this matchup. And then after the match, as I think it was Tony was telling the story as he was driving him home, Invader said that
He's gonna kill that.
he was gonna kill that man.
Mm-hmm.
So little did we know that that wasn't a pro wrestling threat and that it was a real life threat.
Yeah.
So also talked to one of the former promoters out in here in the United States that was very close to Frank, and he basically tells the story about Frank having doubts before his last trip to Puerto Rico and saying that he had to get the money that he was owed from
He's owed $2,500
$2,500. That's a lot of money back in those days.
back
Hell
then. Yep.
yeah, that shit like 2.5 mil back then.
He told David Manny. No, Manley.
David Manning. Yep.
Yep. He
David
told
Manning.
David Manley that he was gonna get his money and he's gonna come back with his money because they owed him his money. But
So
unfortunately,
that's what he wanted to do on his trip. So basically, they tell a story about Bruiser making his way over to Puerto Rico. I love the story with Barbara kind of telling about the transformation from Frank
yes.
to Bruiser Brody. It's talking about how he had his hair all like in the
And a
ponytail when he
ponytail.
was in the
Yep.
car. And then when he came out the car, he just let it all hang out. And that's how he became Bruiser Brody.
Transformation happened right in front of her face.
Yeah. She could see it. She said right in front of her eyes that she was dropping him off to the airport.
I didn't even know Bruiser Brody. I just saw the transformation. I was like, oh, it's right in front of my face.
Right.
Right in front of your eyes. They also had his son on there. The son was just very sad. You know, it's a common theme with these dark side of the rings when you lose your parents so young.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to have a lot of sympathy for the kid. And he says off the bat he didn't have a lot of memories of his dad, and it was all stories that other people had to tell him.
That's what hit me the most when hearing his story, is because he's hearing all of these other people telling more stories about his own father than he can share about his own father. So it was like, damn, that's kind of fucked up. That, you know, you got more people talking about your dad than you can share about your dad. So that definitely must have hit home, especially talking about it during this podcast, during this documentary.
Yes.
Absolutely. I agree there. So you gotta feel for the kid. Of course, you gotta also feel for Barbara, but she added a lot to this documentary, which we'll get into as we go on. But this was really the point where they started talking about the infamous day in Puerto Rico. So I gotta say, this Tony Atlas is one of the all-time MVPs of Dark Saturday. His performance recounting the events of this day is like one of the highlights of the entire series of Dark Saturday.
It is. It definitely is. Yep.
So Tony basically starts his story saying that he saw that Bruiser Brody was left at the hotel. He was with Dutch. I think he was with Dutch Mantel at the time,
Mhm.
and they were waiting for their ride to the arena. Tony told Bruiser and Dutch to get in the car with him, so they
Yep.
drove to the arena. So when they got to the arena, everybody was kind of doing their thing, getting ready for the show. Tony was doing his drawings, which he was very talented in, as we saw during this documentary with him drawing a picture of Bruiser Brody, which was excellent. But
Mhm.
Bruiser came over to him and basically was like, "Oh man, that's really good," and he wanted to get a picture
Okay.
drawn of him and his son. So he had the picture of him and his son, and he showed it to Tony. As that was happening, Invader called Bruiser over to the shower, and he had basically a towel wrapped around his hand, and he told Bruiser to come on over. So Bruiser came on over as Tony is sitting there still drawing, and all he hears is a loud a loud gas, and then all of a sudden he hears like rumbling, and he hears another gas, and then all he sees is Bruiser Brody hunched over coming out of the shower and holding on to his chest, and then he sees that Invader has a knife in his hand and has the knife raised. So Tony leaps up and grabs Bruiser and pushes him back, pushes him down to the floor, and he discovers that Bruiser has a puncture wound in his stomach. So what was your? I could already see your face, Chrissy, as I'm recounting the story here. What was your thoughts on like this initial discovery that Invader basically attacks Bruiser in the shower with the knife?
It's all everyone's story, especially well, mostly Tony and Dutch's story is mostly the same. When they said they walked in and it didn't feel right, you know what I'm saying? They walked in there and they see the guy sitting and huddling along, and they're like, just something is not right. It's not like their usual day or the usual time of when everyone's supposed to be getting ready for a big event. And as he's in this homeboy calls him into the shower and was like, y'all not even for like Tony said, y'all not even friends. Like, why you calling me? Like, what's the problem? And you call me over here, you're by yourself, ain't nobody in there with you. And now all of a sudden you just happen to call me, you want to talk to me. What you want to talk to me about? So it's already suspect and red flags all from there. But Dutch is gone, so the only person that can account for this is Tony. And you hear Tony's side of telling what happened. And he sees Brody come out hunched over, and he catches him before he even like collapsed as he's holding his chest. And I'm like, yo, like who? Where's security? Where is people at? That's like in like at these events. That's like walking around like nothing. Everything is just all wrong, and it's just so sad.
So as Bruiser is on the floor, with Tony looking over him, we have Carlos Colon. He grabs Invader, he pushes him into the shower. They get
Mm-hmm.
into a whole yelling match, and then Carlos comes out and tries to check on Bruiser Brody, which Tony Atlas immediately denies. He's like, "You motherfuckers are not getting anywhere near him,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
trying to kill
Get,
him."
get away from him, sucker.
Tony owned. Dutch says that he came in and he could tell that it was like a whole big commotion in the locker room because he was over in the stands watching as everybody was coming in, and then he heard about the whole big commotion in the locker room. So Tony tries to keep Carlos Colon back, but then Bruiser tells him to let Carlos come over, and Bruiser tells Carlos to take care of his wife and his son and his family.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems that Bruiser immediately knows that he is not going to survive this. He is not going to make it. So Tony Atlas basically has them call like the medical team and try to get Bruiser Brody out of there. Of course, they can't lift the big body of Bruiser, so Tony talks about how he curls up curls up Bruiser's body and puts him on the stretcher so he could be taken away.
Because no
And
one can carry him because he was so big.
Absolutely. And then he gets them into the ambulance, and Tony rides with them in the ambulance. The narration is done by legendary wrestler, WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley, and he talks about how in wrestling they always say the term that you don't walk away with a lot of friends, but you can make one true friend in this business. And Bruiser Brody found out that night that that one true friend was Tony Atlas. So what was your thoughts on like this whole big commotion, Tony Atlas role and kind of getting him to the hospital and everything, top guy JJ?
Wow. I mean, just one hearing Tony talk about it, like you could hear the pain in his voice as he's describing everything because one, this is that time of era where your word isn't going to be believed and there wasn't many people surrounding you. So now he has this whole side and it's like it's very hurtful and to find out, that you're probably going to lose, as you said, your one true friend and he's basically dying in your arms. And the last thing that this man tells you is don't drop me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't drop me. He's like, man, I curl more than what you weigh.
Right.
Like it's like I got you, man. I got you, man. And you could just see that the anger and the anguish that comes out of Tony when he's talking about this because and you could see it from the reaction of everyone else that is speaking on this. No one else had the same reaction that Tony did. Like
Right.
everyone was very insincere. Everybody was in the back, and people were laughing. They were
Mm-hmm.
giggling, and he was pissed the fuck off. Like this is real. Like this shit is happening. Like, and you guys are out here talking about entertainment and getting ready for your matches and joking around and shit. And it's like this man is really about to die.
Yep.
And this is not a part of the story. This is not a part of what's happening. This is real. And you can hear it in his voice. And as we start to talk about how he feels about the rest of them, it's gonna come. But just I loved the way Tony got into all of the aspects of this story. So what's going on because you get to really feel his pain and you get to really hear his love for Bruiser.
Yep.
So he also recounts getting to the hospital and Bruiser having him and Bruiser having to wait, even though he had a puncture wound. Basically, one of the doctors at the hospital tells him that a puncture wound is like a cough or a cold in Puerto Rico. So Atlas grabs the doctor, grabs him by, puts him on the shoulder, and brings him over to Bruiser. And he brings him over, and he sees that it's actually serious. They have him take off Bruiser Brody's shoes, and he sees that his feet are already blue. So Tony Atlas, so upset, punches a wall at the hospital. So they hurry
Arm
Bruiser
goes
Brody.
through the fucking wall. His arm went through
He
the
said the
fucking
the
wall.
whole arm. Yep.
Whole arm went through the wall, so they get him into the surgery room. Of course, Tony Atlas is panicking. The nurse and everybody tells him that they're not even scared for your friend. They're not even scared for themselves. They're scared of you
Scared
right
of
now.
you.
So they tell
They
Tony
need to
to that he
leave.
needs to leave. So he leaves. He goes back to the arena, and as Job Guy JJ says, he sees that everybody's like laughing and joking about all the good match and stuff. So Tony is pissed. The cops are there investigating, and apparently all the wrestlers and everybody has told the cops that a fan attacked Bruiser Brody. But what really happened was that the invader had left and got his clothes changed, and then came back and actually performed at the show like nothing had happened. And he was sitting there in the locker room. So when the cops asks Tony what happened, he says, "This motherfucker right
That,
here, he's the one that stabbed him.
that son of a bitch right
That's
there.
that motherfucker right
Yeah.
there." So awesome recounting of Tony. So basically, the cops tell him that everyone is telling him a different story, and that no one has the same story as him. So they take his card. They say that they're going to contact him, that he's a witness, and that he'll be contacted when they have the trial. So Tony goes out and he has a match against Iron Sheik. During the matchup, about a minute or two in, he tells the Iron Sheik about what actually happened because Iron Sheik had heard the third person count that a fan attacked him, and no, he tells him that no, Invader stabbed him. So Iron Sheik said, "The motherfucking Invader, the
And
King
mind
Kong, bro."
you, at that time, a match with the Iron Sheik is a huge fucking deal. is a
Yes.
huge deal, and that shit lasted like 90 seconds because they did
They-
not care.
yep, they were
It
pissed.
lasted about 2 minutes. Iron Sheik and Tony basically just walk out of the matchup after Tony tells Iron Sheik what really happened. Abdullah the Butcher says he finds out on the other side of the arena that Bruiser Brody had been stabbed. So it's a kind of like account of everybody kind of like recalling when they found out.
Hmm.
Dutch Mantel basically, when he gets back to the hotel, he basically tells the person at the hotel front desk that if any calls get through to Bruiser Brody, that just have him connected to his room. So Barbara Goodish gets a call from the wife of Carlos Colon talking about that there's been an
Let's see,
accident that's happened.
that's where the story get real fishy right there. How's she calling her?
Hey, he told Carlos to take care of his family, so I guess Carlos contacted his wife to contact Bruiser Brody's wife and let them know that there was an accident. So of course Barbara immediately calls the hotel where Bruiser Brody was staying at, and he gets connected to Dutch Mantel. So Dutch tells her that yeah, there's been an accident, and basically Barbara tells Dutch that she's told that she needs to get to Puerto Rico, and Dutch is like yes, he thinks that's a good idea, that she needs to get on his way. So after Dutch gets off the phone with Barbara, he goes down to the next morning to the hotel front desk person, and he asks them to call the hospital where Bruiser Brody is at. And the woman at the front desk is startled to find out that Bruiser Brody has died, and she tells Dutch, and Dutch is immediately struck, knowing that one of his friends has passed away. The news hits as well Tony Atlas very hard, but I think the hardest one to get that news was of course Barbara Goodish, and in the way that she did. Miss Chrissy Love, I think you would be the best one to talk about that one.
So Abdullah said that he's getting out of there and he needs to leave. Just like everyone else, the event when it happened, and Tony and Dutch are going to leave as well. And as he's at the airport, he sees this lady and she says, "Hey, Abdullah, you might not know me." And he was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, how is Frank?" And he was like, "Frank, you don't know what happened?" And she's like, "No, what happened?" "Well, Frank is gone." Like, no type of like sympathy or like I'm so sorry, like not like Frank is gone, and he proceeded and he left her.
Well, no, she hugged him and
I
everything.
mean,
Uh,
it
Eh,
wasn't.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah. He could have been a little bit more sympathetic or laid it on a little
Insincere
easier.
as fuck.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you.
Just saying.
Um, he hugged her and he left her there, knowing what had happened. Knowing what he know that
The
it's
nigga
that
talked to her like it was an angle from a storyline.
right. Like it was just like unsincere. It was just Frank gone. That's like
Hey,
it
I
was
don't
just
I don't
so.
know how you could break that to the wife of somebody. So
You know what?
I will not blame him for that, but I will blame him for the account. But just before they talked about that
Right.
story, when they
Yeah.
talked about how all the wrestlers the next morning after finding out that Bruiser Brody had died, they had a meeting at the hotel, basically just trying to come to like a sense of what happened. And Tony Atlas and I think believe Just Mantel confirmed that this meeting happened, but Abdullah the
Dutch,
Butcher says that he was never a part of any meeting.
Dutch says that the meeting did happen. He doesn't remember where the meeting happened. He just remembered that they had that meeting. Tony says that it happened in the lobby. Dutch was like it was probably in somebody's room or something. But he did account and said that the meeting did happen. Abdullah, his dumb ass, just don't remember shit. He just said it
Word,
never happened. It never
word.
happened.
You remember everything from that whole event, but you
But you
don't
don't remember
word
having a meeting with everyone else talking about what happened because he
I
had money in
like word,
he had stakes in the
word.
company.
You don't remember a meeting with Dutch Mantel and Tony Atlas about the death of this man that just took place, where you was in a
That you was one
like
of your opponents. That was
word,
one of your so-called like.
word, say word.
Hey, he's got taken a lot of chair shots. You see his forehead. I can
Full of
understand
shit, bro.
if he
He
forgot.
remembered the whole sequence of events, but he just forgot about this meeting.
No, he really didn't. If you go back and watch,
In his version, his version.
he never really goes into details about anything. He says, "Oh, I was in the other locker room and I heard." Oh,
I heard what happened to
he
him.
doesn't
Yep.
give. He doesn't seem like the man that has the best memory here.
He's full of shit. He's
And it was
full
all,
of
and everyone
shit.
was all looking for Tony because they was gonna kill him because he seen everything that happened. He was talking too much.
You remember his fucking forks and shit, though, right? But you can't remember what happened at the death of a. Get the fuck out of here with this shit. This story is full of shit, bro.
Yeah, so Tony says, yeah, they told him that he needs to get out of there because he's talking too much. So he said that he never went back to Puerto Rico after the events that happened to Bruiser Brody. And then we get the account of the aftermath with the trial and everything, and we find out that Invader was acquitted of all charges, and it was basically his defense was that it was self-defense because there was no witnesses that was contacted for this trial, not Tony Atlas, not Dutch Mantel, anyone that basically testified after the events. They weren't even contacted and didn't even receive a notice for the trial until after the verdict was already made. So what did you think about the whole aftermath and everything, and how Tony Atlas and Dutch Mantel weren't even contacted?
It's fucked up. I mean, that's just. I mean, the system was so broken back then, and then obviously, like wrestling is one of those cultures where it was just. It seemed to be such a weird cult, and it was just such a strange environment that it wasn't taken as serious as it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
Because if this was like normal circumstances or a normal actual like real sporting event, because wrestling wasn't really considered like a real sport back then, this would have probably been taken a lot more seriously. They were like so used to violence taking place and didn't know if it was real or fake, whether it was a storyline or if it wasn't, and it just felt like this just wasn't taken seriously at all. And to leave two of the most important elements out of it just literally shows you they literally didn't hit all avenues to see what really went down or what really took place. And then Tony has got to feel singled out and like, what? So why wasn't I even contacted when I had a full story to provide you? I was there pretty much. I pretty much know everything that happened from start to finish, and y'all didn't even contact me. So y'all wanted to bury this before it even got started.
Yep.
So I get to understand what the like that was some bullshit. Like it was like what.
It's very much sad. Oh, another part of the aftermath was, of course, how Barbara and her son dealt with everything. So Barbara took care of the arrangement, saw the body in Puerto Rico, and had to get him cremated to bring him back over so they can have a proper ceremony and put him to rest. They also show the great tribute that happened for Bruiser Brody in Japan.
Yes.
Basically, so Barbara really got to see the impact that Bruiser Brody and his life and his career had on the people in Japan. She said that was a very like touching moment and gave her a little bit of like closure for everything to really see what he had dedicated his life to and how much appreciation the fans had for him. So what did you think about like how much strength Barbara Goodis showed in like the aftermath of everything? Even though she didn't quite get the justice, she was able to come to some type of closure with everything that happened to Bruiser Brody afterwards. Chrissy.
It's just something that just happened, and you just have to like put on another piece of armor, and now it's another battle that you now have to like go through for your family. Like she has to now take care of this young boy, and get through this next step that no one tells you or shows you how to prepare for. It's like she's seen the impact, and she says like it was a shit of a court case, like nothing really even happened. No one ever even like he wasn't even in jail very long. Like they didn't even put handcuffs on him. She just tells you like everything was just all like really just bad, and no one really even thought to think about what was happening on her side, and they just thought of this other person, the suspect that did this crime, and never even did any jail time. They they interviewed him for maybe a few minutes, and they just said it was self-defense. You just go by one person's side, and you never even speak to all the people that had a story to tell, and it just shows like her how women just are just built just to like withstand or just do anything regardless of what's happening around them.
Just to pick everything up and show that much strength to raise her child on her own, you got to give Barbara a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
It was kind of shades of how Martha Hart kind of had to pick up everything and had
Exactly.
her
Yep.
fight after Owen passed away.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, what is your guys' final like overall thoughts on this story? Like I said, I think the MVP of this episode is for sure Tony
Tony,
Atlas. Tony
for sure.
Atlas. The LVP. I wouldn't even say that this episode had any LVPs. I mean, I think by your guys' review and synopsis of this, I think your LVP would be Abdullah the Butcher, though.
That's a fact. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Abdullah was fucking useless. He was
Yeah.
useless. He was just
Yeah.
there. He was there. He was on the episode to show you how useless he was. Like, he was just there for namesake and for you to remember, oh, Abdullah the Butcher, the wrestler. Yeah. Other than that, his information was fucking useless.
Yep.
So
sure.
where do you guys think this episode ranks as far as season 1 for Dark Side of the Ring?
Uh,
I'd say so far out of the three, this is the best one.
Yeah.
Personally, yeah. I mean, if I had to go with 3 documentaries and the most impactful out of the 3, yeah, definitely this one here.
Absolutely. Agreed.
This is definitely number one. This is definitely number one.
Yep.
All right.
Just goes to show you that the Montreal Screwjob is just slowly getting down to the bottom.
And if you wanted to know who Mick Foley idolized and who he wanted to get in the ring with, that's the man right there. He wanted to be like Bruiser and get in the ring with Bruiser.
Yep.
Absolutely. Like his contribution is kind of underrated as well as the narrator, kind of telling the story and everything.
I forgot he was the narrator of this whole documentary. I was like, wow. I was like, go ahead, Mick, yo.
Yes, he added a lot. His voice added some gravitas to this documentary and to this episode. So yes, we would say out of the first 3 episodes of season 1, this was the best episode yet. But we got episode 4 coming up, guys, and we are going to be talking all about the Von Erichs, the story of one of wrestling's first families, most famous families, and probably the most infamous family for all the tragedy that has happened with them. Are you guys ready for that one?
Yes,
no.
I am ready. You not ready?
No, this shit is gonna be a fucking train wreck. No, good lord, no. I have a question for y'all though. I mean, and this is kind of stuck on Bruiser though. What era do you think Bruiser would have fit best in today's in our wrestling culture? What era do you think he would have fit best in?
Wow.
He would have fit in nicely in the 90s with ECW.
Mm-hmm.
He could have been the Terry Funk before Terry Funk.
I was gonna say he could have probably had great matches with Funk for sure. I'm sure they would have like killed the place.
Can you imagine the bloodbath him and Mike Awesome would have had?
Well, he would have been out of wrestling before Mike.
No, just a thought. Just a thought.
But him and Sandman, I can only imagine the bloody wars they would have.
I wish we could have seen him and Mick Foley, to be honest, man. I really wish that he could have, that could have been something that I could see Cactus Jack and him doing something crazy. What if he would get
Bruiser had the look in the marquee to fit with so many of these generations, which is what makes him so impactful.
He had great
hair. Of course, that's the number one.
You know how much people pay for bundles like that, yo? It's crazy.
Oh, we want to find out from you in the comment section below. No, but you can find out in the comment what you thought about the killing of Bruiser Brody, where it ranks as far as you as the first season of Dark Side of the Ring, or overall in the Dark Side of the Ring season series, where this episode ranks, and join us back for episode 4 as we break down the Von Erichs. You can like this video, push that thumbs up. It helps the YouTube channel grow. It helps other wrestling fans like yourself get these Dark Side of the Ring reviews. And of course, you can also push the subscribe button and the bell to stay notified for all the great content right here on True Hill Heat. So, for the princess of all the True Heels, Miss Chrissy Love, for our resident True Heel alcoholic, Top Guy JJ. It is me, your True Heel Phenom SP3. This has been Dark Side of the Ring Season 1 review for The Killing of Bruiser Brody. We are signing off until next time.